Hey guys, what's up? It's Samantha, and I am finally sitting down to kind of get caught up on Plan With Me's, and this Plan With Me is for the first week in April, so the week of March 30th through April 5th, and I've sort of been, not dreading, but not looking forward to doing these Plan With Me's. April was a pretty meh month for me. I'm sure it was a meh month for a lot of people, but it just is really boring and repetitive, and I just wasn't looking forward to sitting down and rehashing everything that happened in these weeks. So I figured I could talk about the books that I read this week to sort of have something to talk about that's different than just, and then I played Animal Crossing, and then I read a book, and then I unloaded the dishwasher, and then I did laundry, and then I got up and did it all over again the next day. So, obviously, this kit is from Scribble Prints Co., and I also pulled in Scribble Prints Co. rose gold foil and this marble and rose gold wiggle from Scribble Prints Co. So I really like how this turned out, and it's weird that I did another kind of pinky purpley spread back to back. Who am I? But yeah, I'm going to jump into the books that I read this week. So the first book I finished this week was on Tuesday, and that was Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann, and I gave this 4 stars. I'm not normally a big nonfiction person, but this read more like a true crime thriller suspense novel, and this is also a part of history that I really knew nothing about, so I just found it really fascinating. We follow both a woman, Molly, who is a member of the Osage tribe, and people all around her keep dying, and there is sort of this theory that people are being killed, or that people on the Osage reservation are being killed for their head rights, which provides them with a lot of money for the oil that is found on their land. And then the second part follows the federal investigator who was sent to sort of figure out what was going on and why all these people kept dying, because local officials kept sort of bungling the investigation. And then the third part, which is really only maybe 10 or 15% of the book, is the author sort of speaking directly to the audience about his experience researching this book and talking to descendants of Molly and other people who were impacted by these murders. And I just found the whole thing to be really fascinating, and just, it was a ride, and it's something that I think is going to stick with me for a long time, and is not the kind of book I would normally gravitate towards, but I'm so glad that I read this. So then the next book I read was an advanced copy, and that was The Camelot Betrayal by Kiersten White, and I gave this 3 stars. This is definitely a more younger teen YA novel, in my opinion. I don't think this has a ton of adult appeal. It's the sequel to Guinevere Deception, and a lot of my feelings I had about Guinevere Deception sort of translate to The Camelot Betrayal. I feel like there's a lot of filler, and we don't really get any answers at all to sort of the overarching mystery of who Guinevere is, why she doesn't have her memory, what her relationship to Merlin or the Lady of the Lake is. And it's just frustrating, because usually when there's a trilogy and there's sort of a big mystery, you at least get little breadcrumbs before the third book. And it just felt like a lot of this book was filler, and I think this would have been a stronger story if it had been one maybe 500-page book instead of 3 300-page books, if that makes sense. It just feels like there's so much filler, and Guinevere keeps getting kidnapped and held at gunpoint, and not gunpoint, but like knife point, or, it's unbelievable that someone would get kidnapped so many times in one book, and it stops having any threat or consequence just because it happens so much. With that being said, I still did enjoy the book, which is why I gave it 3 stars. It was a really fun, easy, kind of mindless read, and I'm invested in finding out who Guinevere is, because literally nothing was revealed. This whole book kind of not much shifted from where we began the book to where we ended the book, which, now that I'm thinking about it, this might be more like a 2.5 star than a 3-star read. but I still really want to know what the answer to the mystery is. So I'm going to read the third book. But overall, I think this is just a pretty average series, which is disappointing, especially because the covers are gorgeous. But I'm hoping I get answers in the third book that at least feel satisfying, or at least make me be like, okay, well, it was at least worth reading this sort of like boring second book to get through it all. We'll see. So then the third book I read was one of my only 5-star reads in April. April was a pretty meh reading month across the board, and that was Picturesque in the Light by Kelly Lloyd Gilbert. This is a book that all of my coworkers have been recommending that I read, and I've only heard great things about it. It's a YA contemporary, a harder-hitting contemporary that follows a boy named Daniel who has just been accepted into art school on the other side of the country. He lives with his parents who are Chinese immigrants, and one day while he's trying to find something in the closet, he stumbles across a box that has a bunch of pictures of a baby girl in it, and also this weird file on this investor billionaire dude and all this information about him. And when Daniel asks his parents about what is going on, they sort of freak out and don't give him answers, and Daniel kind of starts to realize that there's maybe more to his parents than he thought, and that his parents are maybe hiding some more stuff about their past than he realized. And this book is kind of about Daniel discovering that his parents are flawed people and that his parents have a past, and also how much his parents love him. And this was just a really incredibly moving story. Both of his parents are dealing with mental illness. His mom has panic attacks, and his dad loses his job and is very clearly depressed. And Daniel is trying to hold it all together. And it was just a really moving book. I teared up at the end of it, which is saying something because I don't cry very often when I read books, but this one really moved me. I also really connected to Daniel's high school experience. It reminded me a lot of my high school experience. Well, obviously I've never been a Chinese teenage boy. I connected to his friend group, and a lot of the stuff he was experiencing at school and sort of the culture of his school felt a lot like my high school experience. And I just really connected with pretty much every aspect of this book. And I did listen to this on both audiobook and read it as an ebook, and I enjoyed it in both formats. And then the last book I read, I finished on Sunday, and this is the book that took me forever to read. It took me over 2 months to get through this, and that is Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth, which was an advanced copy, but it's out now. And this is an adult fantasy, Veronica Roth's first adult fantasy that sort of follows what the aftermath would be for the chosen ones that we read about in a lot of YA fantasy books, sort of what their psychology would look like by the time they got to age 30. So basically in this book, the United States, the world, everything is the same up until about, I think, 2005. And then this dark one just appears, and there's suddenly magic, and there's never been magic before. And the government is involved, not in bringing the magic there, but the government has to get involved in trying to fight this dark one. And there is a prophecy made by someone that there will be a chosen one to defeat the dark one, and there's sort of a guideline of what to look for, similar to when you read Harry Potter and, born as, the seventh month dies or whatever, and sort of the qualifying things, parents that have defied the Dark Lord. So it's sort of those same qualifiers, and, in Harry Potter, you're like, oh, it could be Harry Potter or it could be Neville. This is sort of the same thing where the government finds 5 people between the US and Canada who fit the bill for who could possibly be the chosen one, and they just treat all of them like they're the chosen one, and they put them through really intense training, and they subject them to a lot of experiences that are really traumatic and things that no 15, 16, 17-year-old should be experiencing. And they end up defeating the dark one, but there are some serious lasting psychological impacts on them, and we mainly follow Sloane, who is not coping at all. She has crippling anxiety, panic attacks. She's on a cocktail of medications just to function on a daily basis. And she has basically shut herself in. She doesn't like to go out because she doesn't like to be recognized in public. And she is like not a happy person, but I really enjoyed what Roth did with her psychology, and also how the other 4 people have all handled things differently. Like someone has sort of translated their fame into being a influencer, like an Instagram influencer, and they have a huge following and they make YouTube videos, and there's someone else who sort of translated it to being a motivational speaker and a leader and sort of this Captain America type figure. And other people aren't coping with it as well. So everyone just sort of has their different ways they've coped with this trauma and how it's affected them. And I really loved that part of the story, which is about the first third. And then I don't want to spoil anything. It's hard to talk about this book without spoiling it, but there is a very large plot twist that happens about a third of the way through the book. And I felt like everything that happened after that was just sort of half-baked. And the magic system was it was a very soft magic system, but there were no rules, and I just didn't understand how it worked, and the world building felt really weird, and I just didn't care about the plot at all. I was kind of hoping that this book was going to be more like Sloane digging into the government files around her and the other chosen ones, because this book sort of opens with her putting in a Freedom of Information Act request to get all of the government files about her, and she's trying to get answers to what happened to them, and she's really angry at the government for what she was put through at the age of 15 and how they like ruined her life, and she didn't ask for this, and she didn't get a say in the matter, and a lot of like feelings that you could understand a chosen one having. And I thought that was really interesting, and I wish the whole book had been more of a quiet, introspective study on Sloane like processing her trauma and trying to figure out what happened to her, and like how these people could justify using teenagers to fight their battle for them, and like how screwed up that is, especially now that she's an adult, like that they would treat teenagers that way. And I really liked that, which is why I gave this 3 stars, because even once the plot sort of takes a hard left turn, I still appreciated the psychology of the characters. I just didn't like the plot or the magic system at all of this book. It just didn't work for me at all. But I would really love to read another fantasy series by Veronica Roth written for adults. I think this shows she has potential, and I think especially character-driven fantasy, I think would be something that would work really well for her. Her characters were very captivating, and I appreciated that a lot. It's just not my type of magic system or world building, I don't know, preference. It wasn't a bad book by any stretch of the imagination. I just didn't care once the sort of secondary plot kicked off. I was just like, I don't care. Apparently there's going to be a sequel, even though I felt the end of this book was pretty satisfying, and I think it would work as a standalone. So I don't think I'm going to pick up the sequel, because there weren't really any questions I had left. But yeah, that's how I felt about that, which, again, very mixed feelings about a lot of books this month. So, like I said, this week was pretty much more of the same, but on Saturday we did have a Zoom party with a bunch of Joe's fellow residents, and I may have gotten a little tipsy. I think it's because I had worked out pretty hard right before I started drinking, and I don't think I ate enough food, and I was just like having a good time, and it like hit me really, really hard. I don't normally get very drunk, like even if I'm sipping on wine, I'm like a very paced drinker, and it just like really hit me super hard. So I was like not feeling great Saturday night or Sunday morning. So I slept in really, really late on Sunday because I was just like not feeling great. I was a little hungover. And then I ended up playing Animal Crossing like basically all day with Joe, and we got on with my brother and my sister-in-law and visited each other's towns, so that was fun. But that was pretty much, those were like the only things that happened this week that weren't just like chores or playing Animal Crossing in general or reading. It's been very boring. I'm like, I don't mind being at home. I know some people are going stir crazy. I like my house and I like being alone. That part doesn't bother me. I think next week is the week I found out I was being furloughed. And that was what caused the anxiety, was getting all the unemployment stuff figured out, because that was just a headache. I know lots of people have been dealing with this. I have coworkers that have been trying to call unemployment for weeks and weeks and weeks and can't get through. Luckily, I did get it figured out. And sort of once all of that resolved, within a couple days, my anxiety went down and I'm back to sort of just enjoying myself and enjoying my time at home and reading a lot more. I went through a sort of reading slump in the middle of this month, which part of it was I felt like everything I picked up this month sucked, which you'll like see as we go on. I have like a couple of favorites and then everything else was just like meh. So yeah, April was just not the best month I've ever experienced, but now it's May and I really want to try to get caught up on these videos because I've done the like layout of all of these weeks. I've sat down and filmed the layout, and then I just haven't done the like day by day bits because I don't really want to rehash everything. So I really think talking about books, it's a good balance. And you guys like loved it when I used to do my monthly spreads and talk about all the books I read in a month, which I would not be able to do now because I read like 20 plus books in a month. So it would just not work. But I feel like this is sort of the same thing. I don't know. So let me know what you guys think about this, me talking about books while you watch me put down stickers. It sort of kills two birds with one stone. And yeah, I mean, I really like how this spread turned out. It took me long enough to get there. The first part of this, I actually filmed like the layout and stuff. I had filmed that I want to say like the week before this week. I was like still on the ball, like still doing stuff. And then this all just sort of fell apart, but I do really like how this turned out, and it was very shiny, and also it was fun to sit and talk about the books that I read this week, since that was really the only notable thing to talk about. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, please let me know if you like me talking about books while I do. My plan with me is at least for April while I'm sort of getting caught up, and then maybe back to my normal videos for May. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye guys.